Nature Revisited. Nature Revisited is a podcast that explores our relationship with the natural world. It consists of interviews, stories, and discussions that highlight the notion that nature is not a place one goes to, but rather a place one is already a part of, that we are nature. For those of you who are new to the podcast, my name is Stefan Van Norden. On this episode of Nature Revisited, I am delighted to welcome Alexandra Mitjans to the podcast. Alexandra is the global co-director of the People and Planet at Ashoka, which has been recognized as one of the top 5 non-governmental organizations, has been helping develop Changemakers since 1980 in more than 100 countries. Alexandra joined Ashoka over 10 years ago after building a diverse career across both the public and private sectors in India, Southeast Asia, and Spain. In recent years, Alexandra has become a strong and vital voice in the advocacy for the importance of social entrepreneurships and environmental innovations. Alexandra joins me along with a few changemakers from Ashoka from her home in Washington, D.C. So Alex, welcome to Nature Revisited. It's a pleasure having you on the podcast, talking about the incredible work that Ashoka is doing around the globe.
My pleasure, Stefan. Thank you for inviting me and for doing the work you do, this podcast on such an important topic, human and nature. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start with what is the mission of Ashoka and how does it try to accomplish its mission?
So I would say that Ashoka's mission has been in constant evolution ever since it started 45 years ago, but the vision remains the same, which is to create a world where everyone is a change maker. Ashoka and I personally also believe that it is our duty to make sure everyone realizes their unique change-making power. And I've had this vision also ever since I was a little girl. I always saw this distance between someone wanting to change something and actually doing it. You know, Stefan, I always say that human potential is one of the most under-leveraged sources of energy and power in the world, and especially when it comes to nature and the environment, where we have all of these systems and narratives that make us feel so small. So I really dream with shortening this distance so that everyone realizes their potential. And that's Ashoka's vision. How we do it, the organization was founded in the early 80s by Bill Drayton. He traveled the world, especially India, and he met Muhammad Yunus, one of the people that brought this idea of microfinancing to the world. Bill Drayton realized that there are these incredible individuals that are pioneering solutions to very deep, entrenched problems, and that they're doing it in very innovative ways. He came up with the term social entrepreneur, and he created Ashoka as an organization that identifies, supports, and really honors and celebrates these incredible human beings. Ashoka today is the largest network of leading social entrepreneurs in the world. There are 4,000 of them in 99 countries. When I say that the mission evolved, it means that 15, 20 years into selecting and working with these incredible innovators, we realized that the 1,000 Ashoka fellows working with young people were actually putting them in charge as leaders, teaching them to be change makers early on. They were working with migration. They were working with the environment and nature. and really redefining the human and nature bonds. Ashoka is not only electing and supporting these incredible social entrepreneurs, but to also work with them to shift entire fields. And I get to work on the environment and nature field with the 700 Ashoka Fellows in our network.
So what brought you to Ashoka, and what is your role?
Good question, Stefan. I started my professional career really dreaming with changing the world, and I thought diplomacy was a very efficient way to do that. So I started working in the Spanish embassy in New Delhi in India. After a few months, realized that it was too slow for me and was not patient enough to work as a diplomat. And that maybe if I worked for the corporate sector, things would move faster. And after a few years working for a large multinational in Thailand, I realized that I didn't really care so much about the product part, but more about the mindset and behavioral shift part. And that's where the perfect storm happened. I met an Ashoka fellow, and my life really changed completely because I realized that there's nothing more powerful than a new idea in the hands of a social entrepreneur. So I went and supported the launch of this global project called the Wellbeing Project. And a year later, I joined Ashoka, where I've been working for the last 10 years in many, many different roles. Ashoka is a very entrepreneurial organization. I first launched our office in Barcelona, where I'm originally from. Then I led Ashoka Spain and Portugal. And then a few years ago, I moved to the States, where I'm leading Ashoka's mission and vision in the environment. So my role is to work with incredible, caring change makers for climate and for the environment.
So what is an Ashoka Fellow, and how does Ashoka nourish a global community, which includes 5 Nobel Peace Prize winners?
I think what is an Ashoka Fellow is the multi-million-dollar question. We often say that Ashoka Fellows or social entrepreneurs are not just content. When they give a fish or teach how to fish, they will not rest until they have revolutionized the fishing industry. What I mean by this is that social entrepreneurs, Ashoka Fellows, have a unique combination of being profoundly innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial in bringing a new idea to the world. But I would say even more importantly, they have the ethical value that guarantee that the solution they bring to the world is for the good of all and not for their own benefit. Because you can be incredibly innovative and creative and entrepreneurial and use that power only for yourself, as unfortunately we're seeing around the world. That element of for the good of all is critical. We elect these entrepreneurs and offer them a lifelong fellowship. And what we know in terms of impact is that 74% of Ashoka Fellows influence public policy, and 90% shift the societal understanding of a problem. And some of them are unknown outside of their country, and some of them are Nobel Peace Prizes, like Kailash Satyarthi, who has been one of the biggest leaders in ending child labor and human trafficking around the world. He now works in 120 countries. Another Nobel Peace Prize is Professor Yunus that I mentioned earlier. He is well known for being the banker to the poorest of the poor, and he scaled the idea of microfinance globally and is actually the interim president of Bangladesh right now, which is incredible. Another one is Maria Corina Machado, who is a Venezuelan who just won the Nobel Peace Prize. Jerry White, who helped ban landmines and support conflict survivors to become change makers. And the 5th Nobel Peace Prize is Dr. Carlos Nobre. He is a Brazilian Ashoka Fellow and scientist who authored one of the first IPCC reports that conclusively showed that climate change is a human-caused phenomenon. And he has created one of the most recognized scientific frameworks for policy and action.
So, how would you describe Ashoka's vision when it comes to the environment?
We have 100 fellows in the world working directly in this redefinition of the human and nature bond. And that's the piece where we are now putting our focus on. We recognize that greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, loss of biodiversity, they're all huge problems that we need to solve for, and we are. But there is an even deeper broken problem, which is this broken relationship between humans and nature. This is a side of the more superficial climate conversation that is often overlooked. Science has demonstrated that nature connectedness is a critical element for nature decision making. And I always insist that this connection from nature should be considered a planetary boundary. This is currently the focus of our work. We toward the largest network of environmental changemakers in the world. There's currently 700 Ashoka fellows working in climate, nature, the environment in 99 countries. We are building an intelligence platform of what are the cross-cutting patterns. So we get to actually sit down in the table, experiment with some of these leading social entrepreneurs. We think about lifelong agency. We look at the role of education systems. We look at the role of insurance companies on climate narrative. We work on many different topics.
So, how important is nature and the planet when it comes to creating new social entrepreneurs?
We see a lot of these changemaker journeys starting off from a very deep, profound experience with nature. You don't need to be living in the Amazon rainforest to have that experience. You can have that experience in your home, in your city, in your school, in your surrounding. But there is this pattern of changemakers and social entrepreneurs that they experience nature as their first teacher, as their co-parent, as their partner. So this is one of the reasons why we've recently launched a global effort that aims to really measure how an early bond with nature is a lifelong indicator for change making in the environment. To your question, how important is nature and the planet? I think it's fundamental.
Can you share a few stories of individuals who have already made a real difference?
There's 700 stories, so I don't know how much time do you have. I can share a few. Maybe I'll start with Joaquín Leguía. He has made his life mission to ensure that children grow up with, for, and at nature. He sees nature as fundamental care infrastructure for our children. And he's actually working in recognizing nature as a teacher in educational systems around the world.
ANIA is a non-profit organization that I created it in 1995 in Peru. And with ANIA, we bring nature close to kids and kids close to nature for them to be empowered by nature as agents of change. At the heart of it is a piece of land that is given to them to bond with Mother Nature and learn from her. They develop the vision of what's going to happen in that place. And the only guideline is that whatever they decide to do there, it has to be good for them, and it has to be good for the plants, animals, and fungi. When you give a piece of land to kids, it unlocks in them what it unlocked in me. It gave me unconditional love. It gave me freedom and security. Today, ANIA's big objective is for Mother Nature to be recognized and adopted by the formal education system, and with her, nature's intelligence, which are the principles that have kept life going for more than 3.8 billion years. And those principles need to be included in the skills that new and future generations have for them to be able to thrive by regenerating life on Earth.
In 2015, the Peruvian Ministry of Education adopted his methodology for public schools in Peru. And in 2017, Ecuador did the same. So his methodology is now influencing formal education. And by that, I mean public schools in 10 countries. Another one is Hanli Prinsloo. He grew up far from the ocean. And she used to swim on a pond in her family's horse farm and dreaming of becoming a mermaid. When she was older, she actually got to go to the sea for the first time, learned how to swim, and she became an ocean lover. I believe she now holds the world record as a pre-diver. She can hold her breath for 6 minutes or something under the water. She brings children from underprivileged communities near ocean and rivers to experience the sea for the first time.
Something I love sharing with people is that our bodies are 70% water. 70% of the surface of our planet is ocean. We are water, and I truly believe that we protect what we love, and that when something we love is threatened, we act. I grew up on a horse farm outside Pretoria in South Africa. Freediving came to me later in my life. Freediving is when you go down on one breath and swim underwater, holding your breath. It feels like I've dived into the center of our world, of our planet, and become something other than myself. The ocean has not been a place for everyone in South Africa. And in 2010, I started the I Am Water Ocean Conservation Foundation, wanting to share the ocean with more than the few who get to go into the water. And for many of the young children we work with, it is the first time anybody in their extended family have had this experience. And it's empowering. My dream is to instill in my children some of the wildness I got to experience as a child.
On the topic of oceans is Wietse van der Werf. He's from the Netherlands. When he was young, he sailed the Mediterranean Sea and saw that there were more plastics in the ocean than wildlife. He realized how urgent and important it is to protect the ocean.
My name is Wietse van der Werf. The Sea Ranger Service is a social enterprise that works in coastal communities to give young people full-time jobs as sea rangers to restore nature in our oceans. Traditionally, environmental conservation has very much been the domain of academia. We're seeing that actually we need boots on the ground. We need people that are practically schooled. So we're able to provide jobs to young people to literally restore the nature on their doorstep. I grew up in the Netherlands, in a city called Utrecht. As a kid, I would enjoy nature. I knew all the different plants and trees, and I could name all of them. Increasingly with an interest in the conservation I started when I was young, and realized I want to work at sea. I kept thinking, if we need to restore nature in the oceans, restore seagrass along the coast, or plant corals, surely we should train people in these coastal areas and provide employment to them. And that's when the idea of the Sea Ranger Service was born. One of the largest impacts the Sea Rangers have made is in seagrass restoration. Now, seagrass grows along the coast, and it's one of the habitats where little baby fish are born. It has an enormous power to essentially naturally capture carbon. We've been training and employing Sea Rangers just to restore seagrass full time. And by now we're in 6 countries, and we are restoring seagrass at a scale where it's rarely been done before. The fact that it can provide employment, that it can provide career opportunities for young people, that's really where the magic happens.
He also realized that ocean conservation is often restricted or limited by the capacity of local authorities and their budgets and their teams. So with this idea of every job a climate job, he is bringing unemployed youth to become a new workforce for the ocean. And he solves 3 problems at the same time, which is the unemployed youth in coastal communities, issue of war veterans who are also unemployed, and the urgent need for more jobs to ocean conservation, which I find extremely smart, and is actually creating pathways for young people to see the ocean as a career opportunity. And these are just living examples of changemakers and social entrepreneurs that we have in the network.
So where can someone learn more about Ashoka, and what will they find there?
Of course, our website, ashoka.org. We also host a weekly news hour. It's called Welcome Change, where you can meet some of these incredible social entrepreneurs. And becoming involved with Ashoka is so easy. If you have an idea that you think can change the world and you want to be an Ashoka Fellow or a Young Changemaker, get in touch. If you don't have that new idea but know someone who does, you can also nominate a changemaker. Nominators are super important because they are the people that help us see and find these treasures around the world. And if you want to bring some of this culture of change making to your community, to your city, to your company, reach out to us because we have ways in which we engage with change leaders around the world.
So what are some of the ways that Ashoka is looking towards the future? And what are some of the changes you see coming?
So I think the most exciting question that Ashoka asks ourselves, Stefan, is what are the leverage points where small changes can shift entire decision-making systems? We're asking ourselves is what are the social, cultural, economic, legal changes needed for a world where everyone can feel powerful, can actually solve the problems around there? When it comes to the human and nature relationship, this idea that not all climate conversations are just about emissions anymore. Climate is our children's well-being, is public health, is insurance, is the future of housing and the future of food. And I think there's a huge opportunity in bringing what is very political and polarized conversation into this common ground, common frames where everyone can agree on and can care about. And that leads me to what are the critical allies for that outside of the classical environmental and climate community? What about the faith institution? What about the entertainment industry, which is an industry that we're closely trying to work with? What about the gaming industry even? Thinking outside of the traditional allies and going to these more unlikely allies is something that I find extremely exciting. These allies are the ones that are really shifting how people think and act around climate and the environment. And they have a huge role in moving from the world is ending narrative to actually helping people see how beautiful a world can look if we reconsider our decisions when it comes to the environment. The second one is the idea of nature claiming, or maybe I should say reclaiming, its legal, economic, and cultural power. This means moving away from the anthropocentric to experiencing what we call nature-centrism. What does that mean practically is we're seeing nature as a shareholder in a few companies, one of the leading ones being Patagonia, but also Tony Chocolonely. We're also seeing nature being the CEO of companies like House of Hackney. We're seeing nature as a teacher of our children. We're seeing nature being prescribed in doctors' offices, nature being considered a guardian of our health, and also as legal actors. Giving nature legal personhood is something that's growing around the world. And a great embodiment of this is indigenous people. Now they represent 5% of the global population, but they protect 80% of the biodiversity. And so if you want to have nature in the decision-making seat, bring nature itself and bring in indigenous people because you will get the same ideas. This leads me to my last point, which is the role of young people. Today, 1% climate funding goes to young people, which I find extremely alarming. Climate education today sits in a very, very narrow box. And I think we should be driving new measurements that help us measure the relationship between kids and nature, because we know data drives policy and policy drives finance. The face of the climate crisis is not only a polar bear in the North Pole, it's also a human child. And we should be able to be measuring how are young people connecting and acting for the environment.
So in closing, are there any final thoughts that you would like to share that truly reflects the mission?
So there is this quote by Bill McKibben who is a longtime friend of Ashoka and I believe also a friend of Nature Revisited. And he gets asked, what can I do as one individual? And he answers, stop thinking as an individual. This is an incredibly wise message because the size of the challenge ahead of us is huge. And we need to move from these only small personal actions, which are very important also, to also see ourselves and our power within the systems that we're part of, whether it's the school our kids go to, the churches, the neighborhood, the companies we work with, understanding what are the systems that I'm part of and how can I influence them. Every individual in a system is a decision maker. We should be trying to understand more deeply what is our unique decision-making power. And when you get involved in an organization, in a movement when it comes to the environment and climate, it is incredibly healthy because we know that climate action is the best antidote to eco-anxiety. When you're part of a movement, you're putting your energy behind something that's bigger than yourselves. Incredibly rewarding. I always say that we don't need 1,000 climate experts. We need 1 billion new, imperfect, creative change makers for the planet.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Alexandra Mitjans, talking about Ashoka and the Changemakers, and that you take the opportunity to visit Ashoka's website, ashoka.org, to learn more about the amazing work everyone in that organization is doing. If you enjoyed this episode of Nature Revisited, please share with friends, family, and colleagues. And please rate us on your favorite podcast server. It will help us to reach a larger audience. You can follow Nature Revisited on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on our website, nordenproductions.com. And please share your comments and suggestions for future guests for Nature Revisited on the comment section of this episode on our website. The music for this episode is The Machine in the Garden by Ben Cosgrove from his album, The Trouble with Wilderness. The Nature Revisited team consists of Stefan Van Orden, Charles Gagan, and Scott Chasky. And I hope you will join us for the next edition of Nature Revisited. And in the meantime, remember, we are nature.